topic. Now, this is going to be a mouthful. According to the Fed, black families average less than 15% of wealth of white families. What do you believe are the reasons, and what actions could Washington take to address this difference?
We all know, right? I mean, do we gotta say it? You know,
I know.
It's all racism, man.
Yeah.
From the get.
Yeah.
I mean, it's from the founding of the country to today. I mean, right now, the zip code that you're born determines a lot of where you're going to end up, unfortunately. And this is the way it goes, man.
It's crazy, though. I mean, you know, you think about it, like the 15%. Think about how low that number is, you know, and that's on average. So the average black family's wealth is, I think it was in a few $1,000s for the wealth of the whole family. And for white people, it's in the hundreds of thousands. I mean, it's insane. Like, I just can't really wrap my mind around that 15%. I mean, we all knew it was going to be low, but 15% is almost beyond belief.
Yeah, you know, that's what happens. You know, that's again, like, you know, like Carlito mentioned, it's all about where, you know, you're born, where you live, you know, what school you go to. We know that, you know, black kids and Latinos kids are already at a disadvantage, and the minute that they start putting based on the school that you go to, you know, we know that every school don't have the resources, right? And they always talk about like, well, so if my parents could send me to a nice private school, my parents could go in and buy, you know, that $1 million house, and with the system is, you know, 10 out of 10, I definitely already ahead of the curve. So we kind of know that that's gonna be, you know, like I said, we know it, like Carlito said, you know, racism at its best.
Yeah, I was just going to agree with John here. You know, we know that, you know, public education is highly segregated in the United States. And in order to get anywhere, we need to start desegregating public education. And that starts with equitable resource allocation at the local level. We talk about New York City being the melting pot, but even in New York City, one of the largest school districts in the country, it's one of the most segregated public education systems, you know, to date. And in order to get anywhere, we need to start with the base building blocks, which is education. So yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with John here.
You know, that you mentioned that, Joe, that's actually one of the things that I think about. The way the schools are funded is completely ridiculous. When you're going by property taxes, automatically every poor neighborhood is in a disadvantage, and it's just gonna just snowball from there. So I think we gotta decouple that, the way the schools are funded for that, and fund them equitably. I mean, even with that, if you live in a rich neighborhood, those kids are going to have an advantage from their parents, because, you know, they always donate more to the school and things like that. But at least you're starting off for a little better base, you know, from there, versus, you know, if you live in a poor neighborhood, that means you got schools with no resources. That means you got, you know, no supplies, bad facilities. Like I remember in Baltimore before that they had no heat in the winter in their schools. I mean, it's ridiculous, man. And the way the school is funded is completely backwards to me.
And it's a snowball effect, you know. Once you start with bad schools, eventually, if you don't get out of the cycle of the inner cities or poor neighborhoods, then you're less likely to become a homeowner. And most homeowners are the biggest source of wealth of Americans is their home. So if you don't have a home, you're already starting way behind. Your family is not going to pass intergenerational wealth. If you are in the public housing system, if you are on public assistance, there's no way to get out that cycle if you don't start building that wealth. And between that, probably one of the second sources of wealth is going to be like a 401k. And if you don't have a job that offers a 401k, most people in America don't own stocks or individual stocks, but at least many have 401ks. And if you don't have either of those two things, you're going to start way, way behind. So I guess that kind of goes into the next question of what do you do to solve it? Some people have suggested reparations. I for one, I'm not a big fan of reparations, because once you set the number, you go, okay, the number is going to be 80,000. It's going to be 100,000. It's going to be 150,000. It's going to be $200,000 per person. It's the easy way out. It's the ability to give a check, be done with it, but it doesn't solve the problem. If you give me a check for $200,000 and I go and I blow it, then that now for the rest of time, they've all been, we've given the government a way out. You see, we did the reparations and it didn't work, versus coming up with solving the system. We all agree that racism is systemic, and how do we fix the underlying problems in the system?
Why not both?
We can, but one without the other is just again.
So let's do both.
You're just, until the disease is identified and solved, you put the Band-Aid on it, and it's gonna and then the people that were opposed to reparations are gonna be like, this is why we're not gonna do anything for Black people anymore, because we tried it once and it failed, ignoring that they didn't really do it the right way. And I think you can eventually get to the discussion of both, but you have to solve the system first. And it's not a 1 day, it's not a 1 year, it's not a 1 decade, it's not a 1 century thing. Like, we really have to. It's going to take some heavy lifting.
I think I have a little bit of a different take of what reparations looks like. I think many Black leaders on the ground are looking at real policy moves that will really drastically change the way Black Americans have mobility in terms of economic prosperity. I think reparations isn't just the monetary investment that is originally what was the acre and a meal, right? It's more so access to voting, that equitable funding of education, and other things that will impact the economic mobility of the Black community, right? So it's not just that single, like, okay, we're going to slap a dollar bill on it and call it a day. I think leaders on the ground understand that there has to be different steps taken in order to equal the playing ground, not just the dollar bill here.
Joe, you mentioned the 40 acres, and it's something that I've heard about before, but I learned a little bit more about this week looking at this. So in 1965, free slaves were given 40-acre plots of land in Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina. But then when Lincoln was assassinated, the Vice President, Andrew Johnson, he pardoned all the plantation owners and returned their land, making about 40,000 Black families homeless again. And this guy said, "This is a country for white men, and by God, as long as I am president, it should be a government for white men."
Wow.
This is what the Vice President of the United States said when he became president, when Lincoln got assassinated.
Sounds like what the Vice President said today.
Yo.
Oh my God. So I would be curious what we gave reparations to the Japanese when they went in the internment camps. I would be curious if there was a study done that traced where that wealth went. I don't know exactly how much it was, but I'll be curious. That's something that happened in the past,
Listen, but also something I learned, we gotta be careful, like with that wealth, how they're gonna take it away, because something else that was given or that created by them was something called the Freedmen's Bureau and a Freedmen's Savings Bank, and it was formed to help former enslaved people gain financial freedom. But then eventually, $1 million, they deposited, more than 60 Black people deposited more than $1 million into the Freedmen's Savings Bank. But its all-white trustees began issuing speculative loans to white investors and corporations, and when it failed in 1874, many Black deposited as much of their savings. So even when they're doing the right thing and saving their money so they can invest it or save it for the future, they go and mess it up, take their money away, or they take the brunt of all the losses. We don't want to, blow the money away, but we don't want to take it away.
Yeah, and then one thing also too that I was looking at a video by I believe it was Box, and they were talking about it was on YouTube. They're talking about how the U.S. punished Black kids. I think that was really a good video to show, and people should definitely look at it and see, like the number of days Black kids are missing compared to white kids. A 5-year-old, 6-year-old in places like Florida and Arizona, I believe, like they're getting handcuffed. Like, this is like 5-6 years old, like Black kids. Like, it's something that starts so early that they already like see it as a very, very, very young age. So it's already like, they already started behind the curve when it comes to everything.
Yeah, and we're talking about undoing or repairing, 400 years of damage. And as you mentioned, kids are being traumatized is what it is. They're being traumatized in school.
Totally. And
that has been consistent through generations, right? There's generational trauma that affects that economic mobility, your right to be free as a human being. So, I mean, we're looking at this and we're recommending policy, but it's like, it's so multi-dimensional that I think anything that we propose still wouldn't even scratch the surface here.
Another thing, I saw a video one time. This teacher was having his students. They said, "We're going to do a race. I have, I don't know, $50 at the end. Whoever gets to me first is going to get it. But first," he told them, "All right, if you're not racing the pride, just take a step forward. If all your parents are in the household, take 2 steps forward. If your school was missing, a lot of different things like that. And then to the point that you see black kids all the way in the back and other white kids at various degrees having steps forward. So then when he says, okay, now run over here, it was like they already started ahead. So even the people that say, well, I didn't have anything given to me. I don't have any privilege or whatever. Maybe you didn't have anything given to you, but you didn't have a whole bunch of roadblocks put in your way.
Exactly.
And that's what people fail to see.
One thing real quick, just before we wrap up, because, I like statistics and math. So
Sure.
What we were talking about before, the actual 15%, the median wealth of white families is $188,000 compared to $24,000 for black families. For black families under the age of 35, the median wealth is $600. $600. And then finally, that's just the median wealth. When you actually talk about the mean wealth, so the average of all people, in these races, the average white family actually has almost $1 million worth of wealth when you actually factor in basically because all the people at the top, the 1%, they're mostly white. So they really help skew that average. So you can talk about median and it's only 188,000, but when you talk about the whole average of the whole race, almost $1 million worth of wealth compared to 24,000 for black people.
Let me say one more thing. There was a good interactive page that the New York Times had. I think it was last year, and then it said even the people black people with college degrees, even though they have more income, they had less wealth than white people with high school degrees, and it's because of all the things we're talking about. All the things that come from family and generations from before that help them get ahead that they just didn't have.
I wonder if UBI would help out in this situation. That could be another solution where I know Izzy just spit that knowledge about $600. Black people 35 and under only had $600, getting $1,000 a month, Andrew Yang style. What you guys think?
Absolutely, yeah, because it's going to benefit the most, the people with the least.
Yeah. All right. With that said, let us know in the comment below if you have any unique solutions to this problem. We would love to hear about it. Like and subscribe.